The two high-profile bear cubs in Mammoth Lakes who lost their mother to a car accident in September have apparently died. Bennett Kessler filed this report. California Department of Fish and Game refused to rescue the bear cubs, saying they were strong enough to survive the winter alone. Mammoth wildlife specialist Steve Searles and Mammoth police officers said the cubs were still suckling from their mother and, in their experience, would not live without rescue. When asked about the cubs, Searles said he has not seen them in the last 14 days and knows their exact home range very well. Said Searles, quote, "There have been no sightings. I believe they are both dead 2 weeks after Fish and Game examined them," end quote. Now, Fish and Game had refused to allow the rescue of the cubs after their mother was killed. Tahoe Bear Rescue was ready to take them. Fish and Game said no. Then Fish and Game wildlife biologist Tim Taylor went to Mammoth with Warden Chad Elliott to assess the cubs. Mammoth Police Chief Dan Watson said they determined the cubs were over 30 pounds and, in their professional opinion, could survive the winter. Fish and Game Code does say that suckling cubs should be rescued. Since local Fish and Game refused to speak to Sierra Wave Media, Sierra Wave Media asked Andrew Hugan of Sacramento Fish and Game why the local men seem to have overlooked the fact that the cubs were still nursing from their mother. Both Searles and police said that they saw the mother's body and that it was clear that the cubs were still suckling. Hugan said that the game warden and his lieutenant, quote, observed the bears and determined that they met all the qualifications of the policy and were left to survive, end quote. Hugan said that Searles is a private citizen with no position in Fish and Game. Searles had estimated the cubs were more like 20 pounds with no skills to feed themselves. Hugan said, quote, "We do not make these decisions lightly. If the wardens thought that the cubs were in danger, they could have taken different actions," end quote. Well, Bennett Kessler also filed the following report. When the Mammoth Lakes Town Council met last Thursday night, none of the private anger, threats of recall, or blistering condemnations about government cuts made it to the public forum. The atmosphere was civil, and for several hours, citizens did stand up to support specific services. Some strongly stood up for new taxes to help pay off the big $29.5 million debt. Others said that whatever happens, the townspeople have to pull together. Now, privately, more than a few citizens have nearly foamed at the mouth over the proposed cuts of 7 police officers, Whitmore Pool, and other jobs. Officials have made it clear that something has to go to come up with the $2 million annual payments to Mammoth Lakes Land Acquisition. Mammoth Assistant Town Manager Mariana Marashiva Martinez literally let her usually severe hairstyle down around her shoulders, and the tone of the public talk was relaxed also. Martinez told the crowded room that the Mammoth Lakes Town Council could not currently balance the budget on taxes that have not been voted on, nor on tax measure money earlier committed to other things. Now, Martinez did spell out the possibility of an admission tax on lift tickets and other event tickets, an increased utility tax and sales tax, plus an additional parcel tax. All of that could raise as much as $5 million per year. Now, on top of that, another option is to allow more single-family homes to do transient rentals for more taxes for the town. Martinez also made it clear that the town is down to the limit and needs to build strong reserves. She said that cuts have to happen as soon as possible and that new taxes would take time to collect. Now, people lined up against the wall of the council chambers and one after another gave a view of the tough situation. Sean Turner, business owner and recreation commissioner, supported cuts and borrowing from tax measures. Former Councilman Kirk Stapp said it is his personal belief that Mammoth Mountain is partially responsible for the lawsuit judgment, and so a lift ticket tax is appropriate. If not a new tax, Stapp said, shift current tax measure money. He said, quote, without taxes, services will be drastically reduced. Now, others spoke against more single-family homes renting out to tourists. Still others supported funding Mammoth Lakes Housing to maintain what amounts to a multi-million-dollar asset in the town's infrastructure, low-income apartments and homes. Now, Mono County Supervisor Larry Johnston, who is the vice chairman of Mammoth Lakes Housing, called the organization an economic machine that has generated $68 million in the community. Asked by Mammoth Councilman Rick Wood if Mono County would help the town keep Whitmore Pool open, Johnston said that the county already spends $120,000 on Whitmore and has agreed to pay $65,000 more to help the town keep the animal shelter. He did say if the town would make a formal request for help, the supervisors would be happy to consider it. But Johnston made it clear that the Mono County government is, quote, not much above water, end quote. Then Flossie Coulter, longtime resident and co-founder of the Mammoth Jazz Jubilee, she laid out the evening's game changer. She said pass tax measures and get out of the problem a lot sooner. Coulter said, quote, you can put the blame wherever you want on this lawsuit, but we're all in this together, end quote. Now to recent talk that the town of Mammoth Lake should get rid of one or both of its expensive managers, Dave Wilbrecht and Mariana Marashiva Martinez, who cost more than $500,000 combined. Matthew Lehman, the Mammoth mayor, stood up for them. He said that they work all hours of the night on issues that are far more complex than people think. Now the issue moves on to a November 7th council meeting for deliberations over cuts and plans. The public will be invited to comment and question then too. Final decisions are set for December 5th, and you can see more on this story and reader comments by checking out our website, sierrawave.net. Well, Bennett Kessler also filed the following report. Over the years, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power's wholesale water diversion from the Owens Valley dried up the Owens Lake and created what has been described as the worst dust pollution of its kind in the Western Hemisphere. Now DWP wants no more responsibility to clean up the remaining dust, appealed a local order to the State Air Board, filed a federal lawsuit, pushes advertising to demonize the Great Basin Air Pollution Control District and its director, and has reportedly authored a resolution for the LA City Council to support their tactics. Now, in a full-page ad in the Sunday Los Angeles Times that appeared on page 11, the LA Chamber of Commerce and two other LA business groups used DWP's words to blame the Owens Valley for trying to protect the health of citizens from dust that still violates federal clean air standards. Now, the ad claims that the APCD orders to clean up the 2.9 more square miles of the dry lake violate the law and that LA did nothing to cause the dust. In an earlier statement, APCD Director Ted Shady said that state-of-the-art monitoring methods approved by LADWP, quote, show that controls are required on an additional 2.9 square miles of dried lake bed, end quote, and that LA caused the dust. Shady said DWP signed an agreement which included this process. Now, the big LA Times Sunday ad says LADWP has had to spend $1.2 billion on the lake cleanup. Ted Shady earlier pointed out that over a 25-year period, the cost of controlling Owens Lake pollution is about $2,000 per ton. Now, the Air Quality District in LA, Shady said, has set a feasible cost effectiveness limit of $5,300 per ton for particulate matter control in its area. Shady said, quote, if Owens Lake were located in the San Fernando Valley instead of the Owens Valley, LADWP would be expected to spend up to $5 billion to control the problem, end quote. Now, the LA Times ad complains that customers are paying 2 months an average water bill for APCD lawyers and bureaucrats. What the ad doesn't say is that LADWP's refusal to abide by its signed agreements and clean air laws, according to local officials, has caused the legal fight, the need for regulation, and the money to pay for it. Now, the ad alleges that Ted Shady has forced DWP to use fresh water to keep down the dust. The facts are DWP could use water, vegetation, or gravel to control the dust or develop another method. The polluter has responsibility to develop control methods. Now, Shady said LA would apparently prefer to pick legal fights and delay responsibilities. He had earlier said that DWP manager Ron Nichols told APC board chair supervisor Larry Johnston that, quote, the cost of legal fees pales in comparison to the cost of dust controls, end quote. It's an issue, said Shady, of a, quote, historic problem LADWP has with its credibility in keeping promises, end quote. And Bennett Kessler also filed this report. Officials of Mammoth Community Water District and the LADWP continue to meet over a possible settlement of DWP's 2 lawsuits aimed at Mammoth's rights to Mammoth Creek water. Now, Mammoth Community Water District Manager Greg Norby said the 2 sides met 1 time each of the last 2 weeks in Los Angeles. Norby said all parties signed a confidentiality clause on the discussions, so he offered no details except to say, we did make progress towards narrowing down the range of possible settlement frameworks, end quote. Norby said the 2 sides also agreed to meet again in LA on November 19th. Now, initially, DWP officials said they wanted to settle their suits by having Mammoth Water District buy replacement water to make up for Mammoth's claimed water rights. The cost, roughly $2 million per year. Mammoth officials said that was unacceptable. Now, in Superior Court in Mammoth Lakes on Thursday, Judge James Garbolino reviewed the request from both Mammoth and DWP to put the case on hold and continue with negotiations. The judge agreed with the request and scheduled another case management conference for January 29th. We'll be back with more news.